Welcome to the Foundation You podcast, a space dedicated to making you the best version of yourself. It really does start with you. I'm your host, Dr. Young Dorn, and through this podcast, I explore what it means to build a strong internal foundation. We talk about self-love, growth, healing, and building healthy relationships that are sustainable, not overwhelming. Alongside the podcast, I just built an online course for teachers, coaches, and helping professionals, people who feel called to share their knowledge online and want support using AI as a tool in the process. That course is live on my website, foundationu.com. But more about that later. We have an incredible guest today. She's a mother whose life changed in an instant when her son was hit by a car and suffered a traumatic leg and brain injury. What followed was a journey no parent is ever prepared for. Navigating survival, recovery, mental health, and the emotional reality of loving a child through trauma. She's here to share her family's story with honesty, courage, and the kind of perspective that only comes from living through the unthinkable. This episode is for anyone who has loved someone through a crisis, faced a moment that split life into the before and after, or ever wondered how families keep going when the unimaginable happens. You'll walk away today with a deeper understanding of resilience, the realities of traumatic injury and recovery, and the quiet strength it takes to hold hope in the middle of uncertainty. Hello. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're going to help so many people.
I hope so.
I think you are.
So, thank you.
So before I talk about the accident or anything, can you just give me a little background about you? And people don't even know you.
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to come on. I was very nervous. I'm just going to be honest, but I truly feel that if I can just help one person today who's listening, who feels alone or who feels overwhelmed by whatever they're experiencing in life, if I can just be a source of support, I definitely think this will be worth it. So I just want to start by saying that. So first of all, my name is Allison. I go by Allie. I'm 47 years old. I am a very positive person. I think I've always been a positive person. I think it's just in my DNA. I am very passionate about life and just in general. So when trauma came knocking on my door, that certainly helped to kind of have that disposition beforehand. But I am extremely passionate about life. I just love to find, I think, beauty in the mundane and simplicity. I love gardening and cooking and just nature. I'm a dirt girl. If I could just be outside 24/7, I would be perfectly happy with that. I love the beach. I love the water. I grew up just living on the ocean in the summer times. My mom, just to take a step back, I was adopted. Both my parents were 16 when they had me. So my mom and dad adopted me when I was right out of, just from birth. My mom was having trouble conceiving, and there she was going to her gynecologist trying to figure this out, and there was a 16-year-old woman who was, or young teenager, who was pregnant, and so the rest is history. So my mom basically was able to pay for all the prenatal care. It was a private adoption, and my mom and my dad took me home. And the rest is history. I had a very pretty typical upbringing, but I had to sometimes just like pinch myself to remind myself, oh my God, you're actually adopted. There's like someone out there that looks like you, or I never knew my medical history or my nationality. So living in that space, growing up with a family that was all I knew, I sometimes definitely felt different though from them, and that's a whole other separate entity. But anyway, I was adopted. I have a brother who came 5 years later. I've always been, I'm not tooting my own horn, but just an intelligent, highly functioning child, very outgoing. Education came very easy for me. I have multiple degrees. I have degrees in elementary education, special education. That is what I do for a living. I have my master's degree in literacy. I have my administrative degree. I just kept going. I feel like my hyper focus is just delving into learning, and and
that's you.
That's me. And then I have two beautiful young children. I have a 16-year-old son and I have a 19-year-old daughter, and I have an amazing husband who I've been with for a very long time. I was 15
Amazing.
and he was 18,
Yeah.
and we are together 32 years. So,
Wow.
yeah.
32
so 32
years.
years, yes.
Woo.
So we've been
Okay.
together a lot.
We'll get
a long
into that.
time.
We're going to
Yes.
get into that. Okay, so we know about you. Tell
Yeah.
me about your son, about your family.
Sure.
What is he into?
So Jack was an amazing, from birth, just the best baby ever, just happy. Never in a million years would I have predicted what we're about to talk about. If I could have had 6 of Jack's, like he was the best baby. There were no significant signs. He was just happy. There were no terrible twos. Like he was an outlier in his own right. Just happy, always just loving life, wanting to help out. I remember at 6 years of age, Jack would go to Pet Supplies Plus and he would literally volunteer. He had his own little, I gave him a little name tag and I would leave him for a couple of hours. Like that's how much of an outlier he was in his own right when he was younger. Just very well adjusted, very bright, very high functioning. And then we kind of just delved into sports. You know, we dabbled in everything. We were a hockey family, and both my children, just from a young age, we were very a competitive family. And then he started with soccer, and then we dabbled in like some deck hockey. That's when the hockey started. And my husband and I met at the rinks when I was 15 and he was 18.
Oh, wow.
So the first year it opened in 1994. That was very near and dear to our heart.
Wow,
That's
okay.
where it all started, is at a
Okay.
high school hockey game. So, you know, my husband played just not competitively, but just as a midnight hockey league. I used to be like the devoted girlfriend all hours of the night, you know, sitting with my sister-in-law now, just watching them play hockey, you know, through the years. So hockey was a big part of Jack's world. Just growing up, he was a part of multiple teams at a time. He was very skilled, exceptionally skilled, and then started competing in deck hockey teams. As he got older, he ended up then finally around 6 or 7 years of age, started playing ice hockey, and we never looked back. He just excelled in everything. He was a leader. He worked really hard. He also failed. He didn't make the teams right away, and just kept going, kept pushing. And then by the time we got to where we're about to talk about, he had just made a very high-level elite ice hockey team. He was on the Future Stars of America for Team USA for deck hockey. This was a kid who was very high functioning, Regions track student, just very charismatic, you know, loved fishing, loved cooking. He had a very, very odd talent at a young age for just being so creative with cooking. So that was something we really kind of nurtured. And I've always been very close. We've always had a very, very close, tight-knit relationship with our children. So many protective factors along the way, and never predicted what was to come, ever.
So tell us about that day.
Yes.
What happened in the morning? Start us off.
So the morning started off like a typical Friday morning, but I would be lying if I didn't say there were not emerging vulnerabilities happening. That once we started to, I think, hit adolescence, you know, 5th middle school, he's also the product of COVID, and that's 6th grade generational, and I don't mean to blame everything on COVID because I would not do that. However, just having Jack's genetic predisposition, the big personality, the social anxiety, the ADHD that we didn't know maybe at the time. I laugh about the things that I know now. I just didn't see it. You know, we didn't have the information at that time. And because he was so high functioning, I just didn't see it. You know, so much was masked as a result of that. But that morning, Jack was already struggling with some mental health issues. He had come to us that summer and he was struggling with depression. I was teaching summer school and my son ended up taking a little 15-minute joyride out in the middle of the night with a friend. Totaled our car, not because he got into an accident, but because it was wet. He hydroplaned. The rest is history. So that day, I think, was a turning point. I'm sorry to backtrack a moment.
Right, so that was not the accident. This happened before
This was
the
right
accident.
before. And I'm mentioning that because all of a sudden, that was a turning point because Jack came to us that day and said, I have so many outlets. I love hockey. I love fishing. I love cooking. I love my girlfriend, my family, my friends. But I have this empty feeling inside and I feel like I might be struggling with depression and I really need to see someone. He was 13 at the time. He wasn't even 14 yet. And we sought out a therapist. But I remember just thinking, and for any parent out there who has a child who you have this certain, I think, lens or this certain vision of what you think your child is. And then all of a sudden, it's not what you think. Or the word depression, and my son were like oxymorons of one another. I never in a million years would have thought that Jack was depressed because he just didn't present that way.
Right.
And then I soon after learned very much what depression can look like and what that, or how that can show up in different individuals.
ways, right.
Yes, exactly. So the reason why I bring that up is because that was in August of 2023. We secured a therapist for Jack, actually from a colleague at work whose son was a friend of Jack's. Both played hockey. They didn't know they were seeing the same therapist, but it was someone who worked with a lot of the athletes. So we thought, okay, this might be a really good fit for Jack. And he started seeing someone. And by the end of, I think, October, I actually happened to see this therapist in HomeSense one day. Just, hey, how are you? Good to see you. And I remember him saying to me how impressed he was by my son and what a remarkable young man he was. And he really didn't think he needed to maybe see him as frequently. And I was quite surprised by that. And I wasn't surprised because there are 2 presentations of my son. And my son is the mastermind of manipulation. And I think part of what we didn't know back then was that he just suffered and had so much shame and guilt from some of the things I think that he struggled with socially, that he just didn't want to sit in those feelings. And it was easier to just suppress it and have this therapist be like a friend to him rather than really sitting in it and putting the work in at the time. And so Jack was really good at that, presenting one way but feeling another way.
Okay.
And then we went from, okay, let's just see maybe what we need to do. Are we going to maybe get him evaluated? Are we going to get a tutor? We were still struggling with school, and that's what I'm talking about. So showing up that day in January, it was really hard to get Jack to go to school. So here I always parented a certain way, and I laugh about that now. Valuing education, holding my son accountable. If you do this, then this is the consequence, positive reinforcement, always thinking I'm being the right parent in the moment for my son. I have 2 children, the product of the same environment, and yet we knew not until later that, this was not just the accident, or this is not just Jack being oppositionally defiant, this is just behavioral. We didn't see it at first, but we recognized later that this was way more than what was. So what you see is not what is, and that was huge for us, huge.
Right.
So Jack, every day, it was like, let's go, trying to get him up. It was always a problem. So that in itself caused conflict at first,
Right.
just trying to keep him engaged. So what started to happen is the things that he loved, and like any child or any individual who's struggling, that he found passion and outlet in, it started to infiltrate everywhere in his world.
Got it.
So he was having trouble showing up in hockey. He was having trouble showing up at his practices, and this is a kid that was on the ice like 5 to 6 days a week. And so I ended up having to speak to his coach and letting him know of some of the struggles we were having, because that in itself was a commitment. So that morning was just, I wasn't surprised when he called me. It was just a typical day of like trying to get him up, keeping him accountable, making sure he did what he needed to do, and that was that. And he went to school. It was Friday, and that was that.
Okay.
And then my son ended up calling me at 1:30 in the afternoon from school, from class, I believe, which is again a part of who Jack is, asking me if he can go to his friend Jaden's house. Now, his friend at the time, he was the one who had the bikes. His friend actually had moved away to Tennessee and then came back. So that in itself, here we're thinking, okay, because he was not the best influence. The kids my son was hanging out with that summer, there were a lot of changes, like there typically is with adolescence and puberty. And, and when you take those protective factors away and adolescence becomes, there's more independence, and he's now wanting to have more freedoms, that's really where we started to see some of the toxicity start to increase. But he still had the positive outlets. He still had hockey. He still had so many outlets to ground him still, but he was really struggling to show up for himself.
Okay.
So that day when he called me and asked me to go to Jaden's after school, it's this typical, no, you're not going. I'm looking at power school. You didn't complete certain assignments. I want you home today. And of course, it's the constant manipulation. He was just like, no, I got it all done. It's fine, Mom. I said, all right, just give me a call after school. We'll discuss it. I was in the middle of trying to get back to work. And then I never heard from him. And then basically, here we are. I just remember it being a very cold Friday afternoon after school. I just remember, like, it's annual review season for me, being a special education teacher. I wanted to call a parent before I left that day. And it happened to be a parent that I had a pretty close relationship with. So I'm sitting there, I'm just talking with her. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting in my classroom, and my iPhone did this really crazy vibration thing on the table that was next to me. And I've never heard it do that before, so I quickly looked down as I'm trying to multitask, and it just said that his phone, Jack's phone, had detected sudden motion, and it detected that there might have been a collision. And then it just pinned his location, and then it told me to call him. And at that point, I just remember, like, my heart just, I just remember my chest, just that pit in your stomach just sinking. And at that point in time, I had no idea. Here I'm thinking, they might have wiped out on the bike. He's with Jaden. I know he has the electric bikes. I did not have any idea of how horrific or what we were about to stumble upon when I got to the hospital or what had happened. I had no clue. So here I'm just trying to respectfully get off the phone with the mom. I just said, listen, I don't mean to be rude. I think something's going on with my son. I just want to make sure he's okay. She's like, no worries. Okay. I hope everything's okay. And then now it felt like an eternity, but now I'm trying to call Jack's phone. No one's answering. We're all on Life 360 family sharing. So now I know my daughter now, she's trying to call one of his close friends that would maybe know what's going on or where he is.
Okay.
And then within minutes, it was less than 5 minutes, my husband is now calling me saying, you need to meet me at Stony Brook. There's been a really bad accident. Jack was just in a really serious accident. And at that point, it's amazing how your body just somatically just takes over. I didn't even think I could get myself to Stony Brook by myself because I was just, it was a lot.
Right.
I'm reliving it. It was a lot.
Yes.
It was just a lot. And then I literally went into I couldn't even, you become so disoriented physically. My nervous system just went into fight or flight. I think I just froze in time.
Right.
And then my husband's like, all right, do you want me to get you? I'll come get you. I'm like, no, I got this. I can do it. And then I just remember driving there, hyperventilating, just feeling the weight of the world. So many things flashed before me. I felt like just the whole weight of my world just in that instant just came to a screeching halt. We were all I kept thinking about was so stressed that week before. We were getting ready to go to Tampa. He had a massive hockey tournament, so plane tickets, reservations, who's taking care of the dogs, what my daughter's going to be doing, just so much just stress. We were also dealing with a lot with him, so I was already in it, dealing with a lot with some of his behaviors. So it was just a lot of stress. I think back to being Jack's mom prior to the accident was so much stress all the time, all the time.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm getting upset. It was just constantly having to responsibly manage Jack's behaviors.
Right.
Yet there was this amazing side of Jack also still high. So it was so complex because I just used to think to myself, why can't you just learn from past experience? Why can't you just do the right thing? Why can't you just make the right choice? Isn't it easier to make the right choice because that's in you? We see that. We see what an incredible young man you are.
Right.
Why can't you just do the right thing? So that was really the common theme for so long. And it was extremely stressful being Jack's mom, more so than the typical teenage parent.
Right.
And so that day when we finally got to the hospital, what ensued was just on another level. Our world was about to change on a level that I never.
So take us there. You walk into the hospital.
Okay, so I just remember pulling up. My husband was waiting for me. I just valeted the car. And so when we went into the emergency room, I just remember trying to see Jack. I just wanted to see him. I didn't know what to expect, and that was the other problem. I didn't even know, I knew he was alive, obviously, but I just didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what injuries he had. I think, John, the only thing we knew at that point coming in was when he spoke to the officer. It was the officer that John, when he called Jack's phone, picked up Jack's phone and said, are you Jack's father? There's been a really serious accident. And the only thing he disclosed to us is that he definitely looked like he had a broken leg because of what the injuries were.
Okay.
And he had his face, he looked like he had a broken nose, he said, things like that, but he didn't disclose any other information.
Okay.
So as soon as I got to the hospital, and now we're being whisked into the corridor of the emergency room, I just remember, where's Jack? Let's go see Jack. And I just remember looking up, and there were these two men in long coats, and then there was another man standing there, and they were trying to whisk us into this room. And at that point, I think John and I were just kind of what? I felt so disoriented. If that's the best way to describe it. I felt like I was almost having an out-of-body experience because I didn't know, why are you not letting me see my child? What is going on? Who are these people? It just, everything was happening so fast and furious. And so when I was about to walk in, I think I just had a moment of like, no, I'm not going in there. I want to go see my son. Like, I think and I don't even remember how I just remember stopping and saying, I'm not going in there. I will go in with you. I just need to just see my child. I just want to make sure that he's okay. I just want to see him.
Right.
And so I'm laughing about this now because I've since just reconnected with this man in the last few weeks. It's just funny how the way in which the world works. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this long, lanky young guy was like, Adam, he did not have to do this, but he was like, wait, but he like intervened in the middle of me having a moment and said, wait, the kid that just came in the ambulance, like, no, he's great. Like, I was just talking to him. He's okay. I was talking with him. He's okay. He's going to be okay. And in that moment, when that man saw that I just needed that reassurance, whether he knew what my son's, whatever his ailments are, whatever his injuries were, just in that moment, I just remember enveloping myself around this man. And I don't know whether he wanted me to hug him or not, but I just remember in that moment, that's just all I needed, just to be, okay, I can do this. I've done some hard stuff. Like, I don't even know what to expect, but I can do this.
Right.
And that was just enough to get me to like walk into the room with the gentleman. And then when we sat down, they just started asking us questions. And at one point, I remember my husband just stopping and saying, because they introduced themselves, that's what happened. And then the last person to introduce themselves was the chaplain. His name was Jeffrey. Okay. I remember his ID badge was like inward, and I'm sure maybe not to make us nervous. But the moment he introduced himself in that room, before we even started talking, John right away was like, why is there a chaplain in here? It got very serious. And then at that point, we recognized very quickly, I said, is Jaden okay? Because I thought Jaden was on the bike with Jack. I had no idea that it was another person that was with them that day. And so the other boy that was with them, I had absolutely no idea that he was there. So now I'm starting to find out that there was another child. I said, okay, well, is that other child okay? And everyone got very quiet at that point. And that's when we recognized how serious this was. And then we recognized that there was a car that was involved, that they hit the boys. Like, this is when now it starts to come to fruition about what took place and how this all happened.
Okay.
But at that point, we didn't even know, and they didn't even know if my son's friend, if he was going to make it. Like, that's how severe his injuries were. And I think that's why at that point we recognized very quickly how serious this was. And it was just so overwhelming. I just felt like I was literally watching my life unfold from outside in, if that makes sense. I just didn't.
You disassociated, basically.
Completely. It was such a physical feeling for me, and it was just surreal. And then you don't know what you're capable of until you're forced to do it.
Right.
You don't know what you're capable of, especially when you're talking about trauma that you didn't ask for. You didn't ask for this accident. You couldn't have predicted it. It's no one's fault. I still, to this day, I know my son suffers so much guilt, so much shame from the decisions he made that day. But he never would have predicted that some 24-year-old technician was going to be taking some doctor's brand new car out on a test drive and plow into you on a really busy day of traffic. It's not your fault. So now I'm just learning of there's another family that's been impacted. Of course, now you have the owner of the bikes, Jack's friend, who now is calling, as you can only imagine. And that child was behind my son and his friend who were riding that day. And he witnessed the entire accident. So here's a 14-year-old boy who literally just sprung into action, who, after seeing the horrific accident when this man T-boned our children on the side going down, and they were traveling at about 45 miles per hour. So this was a significant impact when he T-boned the boys. Unfortunately, my son's friend who was driving the bike, it was just facial. He went right into the road. My son had landed in between two dealerships, so he landed on grass. So I think that definitely helped him. He sprang into action. It was mayhem because it was by the dealership. So many people came out to help. Ambulances were there within minutes. I think there was one closer than the one that actually got the call. So everyone sprang into motion so fast. But this young man literally went over, checked on Jack, saw there was a woman taking care of him, saw he was breathing, and then ran over to the other boy who was completely just, I don't mean to be graphic, but his face was like split open, and he took his jacket and just held him together until the ambulance came. But this is what trauma ensued for his boys, and to see that. So there's so many layers of this for the boys in this journey of recovery and treatment.
Right.
But that night, that young man that I hugged that day, I happened to be with Jack. He was taking x-rays that night, and he said to me, do you know the parents of the other boy? And I said, no, unfortunately, I've never met them. I know of them, but I've never met them before. And he was such an impact that night, because he said, they're upstairs. I think it'd be really great for you to both connect, to be a source of support for each other. And I said, of course. I was in such shock about the whole thing. But I remember that night he walked me up there. And this is a young guy that was maybe 22, 23 years old. So I sense a fragility in him.
Right.
He might have been through things, I don't know. But the fact that this man went out of his way to just be that source of connection, to be that source of like light for me that night, to just make me feel just a little bit better in my just trauma, shock of what we were just, this tragedy that we were facing. I will never forget him. And then I had a chance to thank him again just recently. So that night, though, he brought me up to this woman who, when she met me for the first time, and it's interesting because never, ever once did I ever feel any ill intent toward the boy, towards Jack's friend. I mean, these are kids who are teenage boys who are being teenage boys, who are impulsive, who think they're invincible, who are not thinking about what can happen if you do that. And she just looked at me and was hysterically crying and just profusely apologizing to me as if, it
was her fault.
It was her fault. And here I'm thinking, I feel so bad because you don't even know who my son is. She knows my son, but I felt that, is it because of who my son is that this is why this happened? Like so much shame and guilt, not shame, but so much
blame of others.
Yeah, and it's taken me a long time. You can't blame yourself. You can't. It's no one's fault.
Right.
But yeah, so that first night in, just a beautiful relationship was formed, and we became family in that first night. And to be able to lift each other up, our families became each other's families for the first few months that they were in the hospital. For 2 months, Jack was there for 2 weeks. It felt like an eternity. Like that was our containment. That was my home. So walking out of there, what ensued after my anxiety, the panic attacks that I've never, ever had in my life before. Just incredible what ensued after that. So that was the beginning of a lot. So here that night when we first came in, Jack ended up having an open compound tib-fib fracture. So the back of his tib-fib bones blew out the back of his calf of his leg. And so being a hockey player, obviously, just for Jack, I remember when I first saw Jack, that was the other thing I just wanted to mention to you, like when I first finally had a chance to see Jack, and I remember walking into the room and seeing him for the first time, and his adrenaline was just pumping through him. And I remember the first thing he said to me was, Mom, he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, am I in trouble? Are you mad at me? Am I going to be in trouble or something like that? And I just remember saying,
you're like, you're alive.
Yeah, I said, I think, but like, you're not in trouble. Like, I think you created enough. I didn't say that in my head. I'm thinking, are you in trouble? But that's like, that spoke volumes, because he knew in that moment, we were just on the phone saying, you're not going to Jaden's, and now look where we are.
Right.
And I'm sure there was a lot of just so much guilt, and I should have listened. And then they were on their way going to a vape shop. It's just a lot of guilt about all of it.
Right.
And then to see my daughter come and see, and my daughter is, at the time, she was a junior. So they're in the same high school. They have a lot of the same friends, siblings. So it's the same group. So this was really impactful for my daughter, and she's a tough cookie.
Right.
So to see the way my daughter went in and saw my son the way she did, to see her react and be so, just hysterically crying and being there for him, and what she did and how she showed up for us in those weeks, it was just very traumatic, all of it. So, and then that first night when the doctors came out and he had to have an emergency fasciotomy, he had to have a surgery, so we couldn't even piece him back together yet. But what ensued over those next days, because of Jack's trauma, I didn't know it at the time, what they were giving him to help him. We didn't know pharmacogenetics, the testing. We didn't know what was bad for his brain. We didn't know we were further hurting his brain at the time, because here he just had a significant traumatic brain injury. and yet they were pumping him with opioids and all sorts of drugs. He was so manic. I will forever be traumatized by those first couple of weeks in the hospital with him. But it's just incredible how, for parents out there, when you don't know something and you're sitting here at the mercy of medical professionals and you're entrusting that they know how to fix or how to help your child. And then because we had multiple surgeries and this journey did not stop just there, and through the journey we've learned and we've had significant testing since then, and then to go back and have control over something and to work with a team of doctors when you do have control, and to see what an incredible difference it can make for your child. It just helps you to have perspective that you should question things. You shouldn't just trust every little thing a doctor tells you just because they have a degree. I've learned so much along the way. And I've also had to give up control as well. So yeah, it's because it's always in my nature to want to fix. And I learned very quickly I couldn't fix him.
Right.
And that's part of the second part of the journey.
Yeah, I just want to take a breath and just say, you are just so strong.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, you really are.
Thanks, Melissa.
And you had mentioned your husband. How has he been supportive through all this?
So John is an incredible man. I think the first leg of our journey, which was the physical trauma, I became extremely codependent on John, and not in a bad way, but I think my anxiety just consumed me. So coming home after like 2 weeks surgeries, having to take a leave of absence. So January 5th was the accident. I didn't walk back into the halls of our building until March 4th. So there was so much that we had to grieve, you know, the loss of our hockey family, the loss of a culture that we were so used to, my job, now having to care for my child, putting him back together, trying to manage everything. My husband was just an incredible source of support for me. He has known me since the beginning of time, so he just knew exactly what to do. He just knows how to take care of me.
Right.
And I think when things were really rough and I couldn't just function, he just knew how to take over. And if that was literally some nights just putting me to bed, that's how much I was suffering. Just instead of me cooking, it's just little things, the little nuances of our life. He just would just know what to do. Also, we had our roles. Being home, once I came home, it was like I had my spreadsheets, I had my doctors, and we also had the other part of this is we have a lawsuit that came at us. We had lawyers and attorneys. Like day 2, we woke up and our story was on the news before I even had a chance to tell my immediate family. So this was a pretty significant event. So he had his role in taking care and delegating certain things because there was so much going on because of this accident, our kids being hit. And I didn't even think we would even have a lawsuit because I'm thinking our boys didn't wear helmets. They're riding along the side of a shoulder of a bike that maybe they shouldn't even be operating. Like, I wasn't even thinking about that. All I was thinking about was just my child, putting him back together and making sure he was okay, like just recovery. And so there were so many pieces to all of this. And then this is just part 1 of all of this. And then here we are, just months of trying to care for Jack, being home, John working, doing what he needs to do, coming home. In the very beginning, it was so hard for me just to like leave my home, which just sounds so crazy. I think back, so crazy. I literally remember when I was in the hospital and then leaving the hospital, that felt odd to me. Everything around me felt like I had this aura around me. Like trauma was just dripping all over me. Everyone saw it. I felt like I was so polarized that I couldn't just go to King Cullen to get Jack some of his drinks and whatever. I felt so out of place everywhere I went, except when I went back into that hospital. That was like my security, if that made sense. It was so bizarre. And I just remember coming home and just feeling work for me. I didn't mention to you before, Melissa, but like for me, and you've known me for a long time now, my job, I am so passionate about what I do. I still get up every day, so excited to go into work. That has been my therapeutic outlet. So my passion every day is making an impact for kids, being a dean in our building, to give impact, to have such different perspective from my son's journey, from the trauma, seeing kids differently, seeing children that are so misunderstood. I feel that I have the ability now to be able to look at different things from different perspectives, to have a different lens, to be able to be that source of support for someone else that may not have that person in their world that gets it, truly understands it. And when you go through trauma, I don't think you're ever going to be healed. It's a matter of how you show up every day, how you manage it. And I think that it doesn't matter what you experience in life. I think when you experience trauma, it's universal in how it shows up, but how you show up for it can be very different. It could look very different for each individual person. So I just feel like it's taken me ebbs and flows, and I'm still in it. I'm still living in such unpredictability, and I still live with fragility.
Right.
But I've also learned, I feel like, a lot along the way to be able to hopefully give back a little bit.
Yeah, trauma is a healing journey, and that's what you're on right now.
Yes. So if I sound anxious, I am. I think it would be odd if I wasn't.
That's honest. So tell me about the reality of recovery.
Yeah.
Not only because of the injuries, but emotional recover, everything.
Yeah, and I think for me, because of the person I am a person who always had a plan. I'm like the person who just comes in and always knows what I want to do. So for me to come into such a horrific tragedy, thank God my child survived this horrific event. But in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I am going to fix him. Like, I am going to be able to get him back in order. And I soon learned very quickly that as much as I was responsible and doing everything that I needed to do, my plan did not go as planned at all. And unfortunately, when you have something like a physical traumatic accident like this, and you're dealing with your own child, you're not dealing with your own trauma, you're not dealing with an accident that you have to process and grieve and recover, and you have to put the work in yourself. You're dealing with a teenage boy who's so broken, who's just physical trauma. Trauma lives in physical trauma. So the result of what happened to him just spiraled him even more. So as time went on and we're sitting here, we have nurses coming in, PT, OT, we had doctors, we had so many like medical things first to manage. And then as time went on, and here we're getting now, so from January to spring break, here we were holding on. We were still thinking Jack was going to get back and start conditioning with his team, and the bones were going to unite together. And then that's when that was a turning point, because April came, we went back, had his x-ray, and we got the news that his bones just were not fusing back together. And this was after, he had his bones were like in 3 different pieces. And so it was really significant. And that was the beginning of like the psychiatric spiral. So at that point, we learned that he had to have yet another surgery. He ended up having to have a bone graft. So for any individual, that's so traumatic. And this is now 3 surgeries in now. And at that point, he recognized, I think that's when he finally started to give up hope that the life that he once had, the identity that he once had, that he so identified as this athlete that was really a part of who he was his entire life. So to have something be stripped, be taken away from you, and then to have yourself not be the same person you are. Just really significant for him. So we ended up, spring break, he went back in and ended up having that surgery again. And that was really the beginning. Nothing was linear. The whole healing process, the recovery is so non-linear. And we've had to learn to accept that. I think for me, once I learned that I was so on this journey of I'm going to fix my child. I can fix him. I've always been able to fix him. I've always been able to manage everything. And I recognized so fast and furious that I can't change what's not in my control. I can do my best to be responsible and navigate it as best as I can. But until my son was willing to show up for himself and put that work in and help himself, I wasn't going to cure him. And I truly thought at the very beginning of this journey, because we didn't have this prior to it, we had glimpses of struggling, mental health beginning to surface, but we had 14 years of incredible success and a beautiful journey. You know, I never in a million years, never, Melissa, would I have thought that this would have ever happened. And so we literally, I think I had to grieve the loss of what my child or who my child was. And I know that's more metaphorically, but it really was physical in a sense. It truly was, because my son is not the same person, and he's also gone through puberty, and he's 2 years older now as we're still living this and in this this journey. But I think once I recognized that I can't do this for him and that it is okay not to be okay,
Right.
And that's huge. It's so huge to know that it's okay to sit in it. And for me, I just wanted to take away my anxiety because it was so physical for me. And I think I'm just learning now to just be okay with it. Like I can sit in that and feel those feelings. And then I use my little tools along the way that I've learned to help me to cope with it.
And we're going to talk about
Yes,
those tools.
we will. So yeah, it's been a process and a journey that's ever evolving.
How did your expectations shift over this time?
So I think in the very beginning, it was like we were holding on hope to hockey. We were holding on hope to getting back. Our hockey family was still holding on. Jack went to States. We let him go to Buffalo and be a part of that experience after. He went to New Jersey, and I remember the moms like sending me video because John took him of the kids bringing him onto the ice with the wheelchair. And when Jack was in the hospital, I wanted to mention something really beautiful, but a turning point when everything hit for me. And I'm sorry I'm all over the weeds, but
That's okay.
I think it's important to mention is when he was first hit by the car, everything was like police came to see him. Everything was like positive and uplifting, and we're going to get you back. It wasn't mental illness just yet. It was more, okay, physical trauma. We got you. Everything's going to be okay. And then I'll never forget the high school hockey games. They, just to honor Jack with everything going on, because he was on the high school hockey team as well, they put his number 15 on all their helmets. They gave a shout out to him when they were at a tournament up in wherever they were. Again, he got to hear the announcers talking about him. So it was all these positive things. And I'll never forget one night, it was maybe like the second or third night in, we had this little couch that I'm like sleeping on. And I remember him waking up and having this like nightmare. And he was talking in his sleep and he kept saying, number 15, where's number 15? Oh, he's dead, he's not here, he's gone, he's not alive anymore. Those moments of waking up in the middle of the night, him talking in his sleep. And then I remember just breaking down that night and him seeing me like that. And then him just laying in bed with him that night and him holding on to me, crying with me, saying, it's gonna be okay, don't you worry, we're gonna get back to hockey, I'm gonna be playing again. Like in a moment of his brokenness and the trauma, him stopping and just me being in the fetal position in the bed next to him, having a moment of like, what just happened to us? Like, what happened to our life? How did this happen? I think that was a huge moment of like, holy shit, our lives have just come to a screeching halt and nothing will ever be the same again. And I think that was the moment where, for me, it was a huge like awakening of, wow, this, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
That was huge. But I think in terms of expectations, I think that the first thing for us to just come to terms with was grieving the loss of hockey and being okay with that.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, honestly, if anyone's listening, when you go through something as traumatic as whatever anyone's experiencing, nothing else matters. Like all the shit that we used to stress over, the bills. I was like an overachiever always. I was burning the candle at both ends, and I thought that was the way to be. I can stay up until all hours researching and creating and doing all these things for school, showing up for my kids, being at every practice, being at every game. I am a perfectionist in my own right, but I just remember being so stressed about nonsense. And then when something as traumatic as that happens to you and to your child, nothing else matters. That was a silver lining. Nothing mattered. I mean, everything seems easy, and that has been a common theme since this traumatic event.
Right.
And we've had to do some really hard things since this journey has begun, but nothing will ever come close to what we've experienced.
Right.
So it just puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
So when you hear other people and their grumblings,
Right.
you can say, I'm glad that's all they're grumbling. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm glad that's all they have to worry about.
Right.
You know, and I don't know. And that for me has been huge because it's just helped me when you have different perspective, when you can look at life from a different lens.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's such a game changer.
It is. I mean, they do say once you've experienced trauma,
Yeah.
on the other side is gratefulness.
It's so true. I have such gratitude. Wake up every day. That is the one thing I stay so focused on, is to remember to be grateful.
Right.
And one of the main takeaways of why I want to do this is because I want people to recognize that beauty and trauma can coexist together. It truly can. It's just how you show up. It's what you create for yourself.
That's awesome.
And it's so important to recognize that, because I
Yeah.
think when you're in it and when you feel helpless some days, or you feel like you're never going to get out of it, it's just how you show up for yourself. It's just that you have to take time to create that beauty every single day.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's beautiful. Now that you're here, what would you have told your old self?
I I think if I could just go back and allow myself to not worry so much about everything. I feel like worrying is not going to make it better.
Right.
Like the anxiety that ensues me sometimes. I'm sorry I'm getting upset.
No, that's
because I'm still, as you can see, fragile over it. Because
Right.
I'm still grappling with my anxiety. But I am very self-aware, and I feel that I just wish sometimes I could remind myself that anxiety is just fear of the unpredictable, fear of just trying to control everything. I think that's what it is. I need to remind myself that you can't control everything. You're not going to be able to fix everything. And it's just the thought that I have two truths can exist at the same time.
Right.
And that's really important also, that I may have the thought that Jack, God forbid, I can think the worst, but it doesn't mean
Right.
it's going to come true. And I also have to recognize that I can only do what I can do.
Right.
Besides like dying and sacrificing myself, I'm
Right.
not going to be able to change the outcome of what is meant to be.
Right.
I can do my best to steer it, but if I wish I could have just told myself that it's going to be okay. And even the moments where it's been really bad, where it's gotten really tough, it's just a moment in time.
Right.
Even when I feel like it's like I'm not going to get out of this, I know it's a moment in time because I've had
Right.
such beautiful moments in such trauma. And again, it's just learning to take action. I guess every person's individual. I've learned what works for me to kind of reset when I'm having moments of that anxiety. But I think just recognizing that worrying it away, or also when you have a child that you're trying to help, you can't talk it out of them. You can't,
Right.
I don't know if that makes any sense. The way I parented my son, I guess we're looking at two different things, but I had to approach parenting my son in such a different way.
Right.
Ooh, that's a whole nother story in itself.
Right.
But how to show up for him,
Right.
to help him, to
Right.
not swoop in. I mean, I learned all these words like enmeshment and emotional attunement and codependency and
Oh my God,
all
love
these,
it.
all these,
Yeah.
all these terms that I didn't even know. Here I am
Right.
thinking I'm being the best parent I can,
Right.
not recognizing. So I guess, yeah, I just wish I could tell myself that it's going to be okay. That, you know, you creating this anxiety for yourself isn't going to change it.
Yeah.
I think because after everything I've had anxiety over, I'm still here.
You're
I'm
still
still
here.
standing.
You're
I'm
still
still
standing.
surviving, and I'm
Yeah.
okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
So where is he on his journey now?
So after a year of being in treatment, so that's like the second part, and I don't know if we're going to talk about that today, but unfortunately, what ensued after the first part of our journey, the physical part, here we are, we fast forwarded to 8 months of being non-weight bearing. We finally get the go ahead in the summer of 2024 to do PT. We were going to have him evaluated. We knew he needed medication because my son was struggling with the mental health
Right.
piece of it. And so I don't know if we're going to talk about that whole piece another time, but unfortunately, just the mental illness piece, the spiral of just having no regard for himself, just so depressed, so shameful, just so much spiraled after that, that my son was just no longer safe to be in my home.
Right.
I don't know, but maybe that's for another time in terms of how all that went down, but
Yeah.
it was scary. It was extremely
Yeah.
scary. And at that point, when we recognized he was no longer willing, or not even no longer willing, no longer able to just manage himself safely, and it came down to survival, we had to make a very difficult decision. And that was the first time, it was like our week starting school, my son spent his first stent 2-week stay at Mather Hospital. And then he spent a year in treatment, and
Okay.
he came home, and not because everything was fine. It's just because our mental health, the insurance system, all of it, mental health is a broken system that I've learned very much along the way.
Okay.
And unfortunately, he ended up coming home, and he has been in our home reacclimating, trying to regain himself since October 15th of this
Okay.
year. So it was almost an entire year of our son not living in our home.
Wow.
And in 3 different states of treatment. It was a lot.
Wow.
So yeah, and that's a whole nother leg of our
Yes.
journey, which literally made my son's accident look like a walk in the park. And
Wow.
I don't know whether people are religious or not, but I feel like, I don't know, I truly believe that everything does happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why God that day, why something like that, as horrific as that, happened. And I don't know if that was like a way of saying, like, he needs to slow down, like we need
Right.
to wake up, we need to stop and pause, because this is almost like a second chance for my son.
Right.
You know? I truly believe that accident was meant to be for whatever reason, and I'm use it to learn from it. And here we were thinking we were saving our child because he kept running away from the very thing that we were trying to save him from. And it was terrifying. We were a deer in headlights as parents.
Right.
Never in a million years would have thought that my 14-year-old child would not be living in my home.
Right.
That was surreal on another level.
Right.
And when he first went into his first residential treatment home, it was just a 2-hour drive away. And John and I were like, oh my God, that's crazy. Just the thought of that. And then to think that the last leg of that trip, my son was living on the other side of the country in the middle of a desert in a therapeutic boarding school.
Wow.
I chuckle about that now because it's just so surreal what you're willing to do to save your child. What lengths will you go to help your child, you know?
Yeah.
So it's been a journey, to say the least. So he's home, and it has not been without struggle.
Okay.
We are in it. But when I think of Jack, I just think of the word resilience. I think of this kid who every leg of this stretch of this journey, he has willingly and acceptingly has gone into this unpredictable world of not living in his own home, wanting to get help, being scared and terrified of why he feels the way he does, why he does the things that he does. Really, really scary. And yet he had such incredible courage and strength. And I always used to think, if my son can do hard work like this, we could do hard work. We can show up. Nothing compares to what he has to do.
Right.
And the trauma that it ensued even with that, the environment that he had to live in, I will never know what that's done to him as well.
Right.
But at the time, with the information we had, with our circumstances, we knew that was the lesser of two evils because I was afraid of losing my child. That's how scary it got.
Wow. So if another parent is listening right now and they're in the middle of like a medical crisis or some kind of trauma crisis, what advice would you give them?
So we're talking about medical, right? More medical
We could do
things.
medical or even emotionally, whatever, any kind of crisis.
It's a lot. I'm just trying to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking with all the pieces, I think one, just making sure you talk to your support people that you know. Don't take one answer at face value. I think that's really important. Just knowing that as horrific as something might seem, it really truly is a moment in time. It will get better. And also for me, I think something that was really helpful for me was when I would look at the big picture. It's so easy to get consumed in this tragedy, this trauma, this accident, whatever it is that you're dealing with in the moment, and say to yourself, you can get mad. I think I went through, it's like a grieving process, but like when you can say to yourself, like, okay, if you can just look at it as a moment in time. Sometimes I just had to say to myself, I'm just going to say today, if I can just do one thing in my day to set purpose or intention or whatever it is that I'm going to do today is enough. You know, sometime it was hour by hour, sometime it was minute to minute. So I think by not looking at the bigger picture, by giving parents a sense of just one day at a time, just look at it in piecemeal, because when you look at the bigger picture, it's very easy to get lost in it, to get lost in what you lost, if that makes sense. But I think I remind myself every day, sometimes because of our active crisis, I have to take it literally minute to minute. That's literally how we are. Yeah. So I think if you could just look at it from that perspective, I think that's just helpful, because it's so easy to get lost in the trauma of all of it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
We're going to definitely have to have a part 2.
Yes. There's so
Maybe
many
even
things
a
I feel
part
like-
3.
Yes. I'll tell you about. And the other thing I didn't talk to you about is just how I came to learn more about Jack. But that's like the part 2 with knowing about my biological family.
Right.
There's like so many things.
We definitely have to get into that, and we will. But for today, I want to thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you so much.
I mean, this
Thank
is,
you.
I know it's emotionally, but I think you are an amazing, strong-willed person.
Thank you.
And I definitely hope the best for the
Thank you,
future.
Melissa. Thank you so much.
Obviously, and
you.
you better watch out for part 2.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. What we've talked about today is the accident, the survival, the long road of recovery. But what you don't know yet is that this crisis uncovered something else. In the middle of fighting for her son, she was forced to confront questions about her own past, questions that had no easy answers. And what started as a search for her medical history became a journey into her adoption, her biological roots, and a chain of events that would change her understanding of her own identity and family forever. That's where we're going in part 2, the chapter she never expected and the discoveries that followed. If today's episode resonated with you, make sure to share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss part 2. You're not going to want to miss what comes next. See you next time.